All right, cool. We're recording. I'm here with Max Harris, who goes by, I'm assuming you pronounce it as Harris, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Or RRIS. And I'm excited. I just want to get started by learning more about you. Like, what's your background and how did you get started in music in the first place?
Yeah. It's kind of like a long story. I kind of come from a family of musicians. So growing up, growing up in Maine, small town, my dad was part of a band. His band would play everywhere. And, being his son, I just kind of go everywhere with him. So I was kind of exposed to music at a very young age. This was all like rock stuff, rock and blues. So not really electronic music. That wasn't until later. But, stemming from that, just seeing how much fun he would have hanging out with his friends, just playing music kind of inspired me to get into it. So him and my brother, we just start messing around. I was actually, ended up playing drums for myself for a long time, started in the jazz bands at school, started playing saxophone, kind of just doing, whatever I could to kind of feel what playing live music is like. And then, that led me down a big rabbit hole of, what does playing piano feel like? What is, doing this? What is playing, like electronic music feel like? And so kind of, I really do owe it all to my dad and my family with, kind of how I got my start. So,
Awesome, man. How did you get started in production specifically, like making music on your computer?
oh yeah, dude, that's a crazy question. So it's kind of a funny story. So I remember, so when I was, the first time I was ever exposed to kind of EDM or, DJing or anything like that, when I was in eighth grade and Skrillex of all people came to Maine and did a show, and like nobody does like any EDM shows in Maine. Like I'm talking literally nobody. So, and I didn't even know what electronic music was at the time. My brother was a big fan, and so I decided to go with him. I just remember walking in, and it was in an arena, right? And this is the middle of nowhere, Maine, so it's kind of like you wouldn't even expect anyone to actually be there. So you walk in, and it's packed, and there's just a guy DJing, and it wasn't Skrillex on yet, but and just being able to see that music could bring that many people together, especially a genre of something I wasn't really familiar with, really opened my eyes to kind of like, okay, I really want to do this. The music was awesome, and then Skrillex came on, and it was so inspiring to see just how many people could actually like scream, and just I don't even know how to explain it. It was just a surreal moment. But from that moment onward, I I went back and went on my school laptop and started messing around with GarageBand and made probably the worst the worst thing you could ever imagine. Um, it probably took me an hour just to make like a kick drum pattern, but it was really fun. And I mean, after that, I just kind of started doing that stuff, and was really focusing on trying to get better, because that's the one thing I feel like that music has an advantage of over other hobbies, is that no matter if you're working on it, you're actively getting better, which I thought was really interesting. So every time I'd open up GarageBand or whatever it was at the time, I'd always like see myself getting better. And so that's kind of when I got into production. I didn't really start taking it seriously and trying to actually make good music until like later on in high school or college. But yeah, I would say that what got me into production was just seeing Skrillex on that stage with like thousands of people, and that kind of was really inspiring for me. So
Yeah, man. In a place like Maine, too, where Maine has a very small population, I'm sure you know.
yeah, and I mean, like, dude, like all of Maine's population lives in like this one little section, or like not all of it, but like a majority of it is in southern Maine. And it's like since that concert, there's only been one more. Like Steve Aoki played there one time like 3 years ago. And so it's like I don't know why Skrillex played there, and it just seems like such a, like, I don't know. For me, it feels like that was a moment that was supposed to happen, because it doesn't make sense why it did happen. But that's how I like to look at it.
That's crazy. There's only been, in the past, your life, there's only been two EDM events at that
Yeah,
venue. That-
yeah, and I mean, so he was the only one at that actual big venue. The other ones were just smaller. And there might have been like one more. I think there was an Alice in Wonderland concert as well. But since I'm not even kidding you, since like 2017, there's probably been one or zero like of actual like big name DJs or
that is
electronic
crazy.
acts coming through. Yeah, it is crazy.
Crazy. I'm assuming you don't produce in GarageBand anymore, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely graduated from that.
Yeah. What do you
Yes.
use now, and when did you make that switch?
Yeah. So the dude, I love telling a story. So it was GarageBand, and then a lot of people go from GarageBand into Logic, but then like you get the people saying like, oh, well, that's just GarageBand 2.0, like blah blah blah, blah, and kind of hating on it. So I actually switched to FL Studio when I was in high school, and I was like, after I'd kind of figured out how to actually make a beat. I just, GarageBand just wasn't really cutting it. And then, so, I switched to FL Studio, I think my sophomore year of high school. And I mean, still at this point, I mean, like I could make a beat, right? But it wasn't good, really. It was like, it was still such a learning curve. So I switched to FL Studio, and I was a diehard FL Studio fan. Like, I would die to, to defend FL Studio. And then I got to college, and I ended up going to school for music at Berklee, and I was in like the electronic music program or whatever, and they were diehard Ableton users, and I literally did not want to switch so bad that I went to the head of the major, and I was like, you guys need to start teaching FL Studio. It's like way better than Ableton. And he's like, yeah, just leave my office. We're not doing that. So then I ended up switching to Ableton, and I was like, I just didn't know how to use it at all, and I was getting so mad for like the first 2 or 3 weeks of using it. But then I don't know, something clicked, and I was like, this is actually way better than FL Studio and Logic and all this stuff. But there is like a steeper learning curve. So now, opposite side of the spectrum, I'm so completely diehard Ableton. It's like not even funny. I won't even open FL or Logic or anything else. It's like now, so it's funny. I was so diehard FL Studio, and then I switched, and now I'm like completely did a 180. I'm like, oh, dude, you need to get Ableton. You need to get Ableton. Just ditch Logic. It's like it's a pretty funny thing. But yeah, Ableton for life now.
Yeah, man. Awesome. So you went to school for music. What did you learn there?
Yeah, so it's it's always funny kind of talking about Berkeley in itself, is because there's a lot of mixed opinions of it. I feel like a lot of people, like, really, if you tell anyone you go to music school, they're going to be like, oh, well, it's a waste of a degree, or like, something like that. But really, what you really learn at Berkeley is more so than like the education itself. It's kind of how to, it's, I don't know how to, it's like an intangible thing. It's like almost how to carry yourself in a room of songwriters and in a room of producers, and how to actually crank out music and actually get it done. Um, obviously I learned, I learned how to build plugins. I learned how to, make better music, but it wasn't really the classes that taught you how to make good music. It was the classes that kind of showed you, techniques you could apply. But then really, it was more of a social learning thing. I feel like, which I think is a lot more powerful than technical skills and and techniques, is because you can kind of apply it, in your own way. Um, but I mean, that being said, I went into Berkeley being very very subpar at production, and like I don't even want to I don't even want to listen to like what I made back then. So I definitely did learn a lot, but I would say it was definitely more of like definitely more learning socially, and like kind of awareness and how to carry yourself, and kind of, I don't really know if that makes sense, but it's hard to explain. I guess the best way to put it is, to me, I learned more than just getting an education in music. It was way more than that. It was a lot of life skills in general, as well as getting the music stuff, which I think just you learn over time. But I don't even know if that made sense. I was just kind of yapping there, but yeah.
Yeah, man. I'm sure you met a lot of people there too, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, that was the biggest thing. So it's like, it's funny because a lot of people say that Nashville or LA is just Berkeley 2.0, and it's so true. I mean, like all the people I met there are the people I work with. It's like one of my best friends, Jonathan. He's like, we have like a pop production together, and that's what's we're doing a majority of our time with. We'll make a lot of our songs together. He does a lot of my vocal production, stuff like that. And then I've met people there who do like video and photo, and like they're like, it's just kind of weird because you go into it knowing that you're going to be around a lot of creatives, and like the one thing they always say about going to a music school in general is, you're really there to make the connections, and it's you don't really realize it when you're there because you just become friends with people. You don't think of it as, oh, seeking out connections and stuff. Once you're out of Berklee, you realize like how many people are doing like big things, or writing these big songs, or like are in these rooms, and that will need to reach out to you, in the future for help or something. So it's definitely a weird thing, but yeah, I mean, I would say I met, not only my best friends, but my best, collaborators, and people who I feel like who are going to be running the industry, in a few years there. So
That's so exciting, man.
yeah, dude, it's pretty sick.
Yeah. Have you said you worked with a few of them, right, on music?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like so my two favorite, I would say, favorite people to work with are, so my friend Jonathan Plummer, and he, I mean, since meeting him, we've started a pop production duo called Playhouse. We're doing a lot of stuff just for, pop artists in kind of the more commercial space. But he works on all my tracks with me pretty much, in terms of like songwriting, arrangement, that stuff. And then, I met one of my best friends, Aaron, there, and he's a crazy, EDM producer, really good mix engineer. And then, one of my best friends, Nicole, I kind of overuse her voice at this point, I think, because she's just so good at singing and top lining and everything. So, but I mean, we have like, 4 or 5 songs together, and we have a few more coming. And I feel kind of bad because I'll just randomly, I'll be like, "Hey, Nicole, do you want to sing on this song?" And I feel like she reluctantly says yes, just because she's like, "Yes, but we do have like 5 other ones we're working on right now." So, but yeah, I mean, I still work with pretty much, all my friends there, my collaborators. My friend Elliot, he's like, really into the house scene and DJing and stuff like that. And we work on a lot of music, for ourselves, or to pitch to DJs and stuff like that. So it's a really cool thing to be able to have, some of your best friends be people, that you continue working on music with, and do things with. So I think that's really cool.
Definitely, man. And it's so important to have a community of other people around you too.
Yeah, no, that's definitely one of those things that I feel like not a lot of people understand, is that you can always make kind of good music on your own, but if you want to be successful, you really need to surround yourself with people that have similar goals, or like a similar mindset, at least, and just and want and like are kind of pushing to be the best version of themselves, musically and just in life in general. So it's definitely great, and that's the thing I loved about Berklee too, is that there's a really, really great sense of community. I will say not all the time, because there definitely was a little edge of competition, because obviously everyone is kind of like reaching for here, but not everyone's going to get there, because you may, for whatever reason, you just may not get to where you want to be, at least within that time frame. But it's really good kind of to have everyone kind of striving for the same thing, and be willing to help out instead of, you know, I guess like I don't know, going against you. It's kind of, it is really important. I think that was a great thing there.
Yeah, good for motivation too, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's. I mean, sometimes you definitely kind of get like the mindset of, oh, dude, like I am so bad at music because everyone else here is doing like these great things. But then once you get past that initial, oh, these people are better than me, and instead of looking at it like that, it should be, oh wow, I'm around these people, I can learn from them, and I can actually, instead of being, I don't want to say insecure, but instead of being kind of angry that maybe they're ahead of where you think you are at the moment, it's and that's one of the valuable things I learned, is that it's not really a competition, especially because you guys are all on the same team. It's like you're not going against anyone in the music industry, really ever, because it's just one collective industry. I mean, you can make the argument, oh well, like Drake's trying to sell more, than Taylor Swift, like like all that stuff. But really, I mean, if you think about it, like you're kind of all on the same page. So I think once that mindset changed for me, it definitely changed how I was kind of outlooking, music and life in general. But yeah, that's a great thing too.
Yeah, man. It's like a little fish in a big pond rather than the opposite. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, totally. It's like, yeah, dude. It's, especially when you like enter, like when I entered into Berklee, and I saw like, I don't know, just like some of my friends had like millions of listens and like millions of streams, and like, which to someone who's just starting out is like so much. And it's like you almost want to immediately be like, either it's kind of like a fight or flight. It's either like, oh my gosh, I need to get better and like spend every night in the studio, or it's like the flight reaction is like, oh my gosh, I should just quit music right now. And I feel like there's not a lot of in between after that like initial shock. Um, but yeah, it's that's just like a funny thing for sure.
Yeah, man. So you said you entered music school and you were not very happy with the way your music sounded, right?
Oh yeah, so I mean, I feel like it's because I'm from a small town in Maine, right? And like it's just hard to describe because you go from, I mean, like we had a music program, right? But there wasn't really any like music kids. I would say I was like one of like the three music kids who like, I mean, like, I did sports and other things, but it was mostly like music was kind of my passion. And I feel like I was like the only one, at least at my school at the time, to recognize that it was my passion. So you go from like being not the number one, like, in your school, like in terms of talent, but like really like the only passionate one about music, right? And you go from there thinking that like, oh, because I can like actually make a beat and not everyone at my high school can, that makes me really good. But it doesn't. It's like so it kind of gives you like a false sense of like self, which I feel like is really important, not to have the false sense, but it's important to kind of center yourself after going to school, which is why I was able to kind of shift my mindset when I got to Berklee. And I was like, oh dude, you know what? This music really isn't that good comparatively. Like I kind of have an ego that kind of needs to be checked a little bit. So um, I feel like that happens for like a lot of people. Um, but then my mindset wasn't these people are way better than me, I should quit music. It was like I really need to be spending my time actually practicing, and rather than like posting stuff I'm not proud of, or just I don't know, basically just I guess trying to show off, if that makes sense. That it would be way easier and beneficial for myself if I just kind of started hanging out with people working on music, just kind of letting it happen rather than trying to force it, or force myself to dislike people who are actually getting streams on their music, or actually sounding good. So it was definitely like a weird thing. But yeah, no, I was not really happy with the music I was making going into it. um and I think that was also a good thing. I think it's kind of a good thing, not to not be proud of yourself, but to kind of check yourself every once in a while. Because I feel like music, especially, is one of those things where like you could be riding a high, making like the best music of your life, and then you kind of hit like a slump for no reason, or like you just become uncreative for some reason, which can kind of hinder your abilities to actually produce good music. Um, so I feel like kind of checking yourself every once in a while is definitely a good thing. But yeah, I was not definitely not happy with what I was making going into Berklee. I was at the time because I thought it was really good, you know. And like I'm sure there was some sort of like I'm sure you could like hear the passion in there somewhere, but you definitely can't hear like the skill and like the technicalities of it. But yeah, I'd definitely say a lot more happy with it now. So yeah.
Yeah, man. So it was a humbling experience going from your small high school to Berkeley, but a good one and inspiring. And you took it the right way too.
Yeah, it was definitely humbling, like 100%. And I think, yeah, it's kind of like within your first year at Berklee, a lot of people drop out because they either one realize that music really isn't for them, which like that's okay, but I feel like everyone feels that, and then it's kind of, if you switch your mindset to okay, I have so much to learn, and I'm at the best place in the world to learn all this and to meet those people to learn, then you should be able to kind of take a step back and say, kind of humble yourself, be like, all right, I know that I am the small fish here. I'm not cranking out these hit songs, or I'm not really,
Mhm.
you just have to kind of shift your mindset. And but it was definitely humbling for me, especially when you go into like those feedback sessions. Berklee would bring in
Mhm.
a bunch of these top A&Rs from like Warner Music, all this stuff, and you
Yeah.
hear like the seniors playing their songs, right? And it's like the A&R's like, oh dude, I want to sign this, and then you play your song, and they're like, was there even a kick drum in that? Like, because the mix is so bad, and it's like, so yeah, definitely a humbling experience. But I mean, I think Berklee itself and like that whole experience kind of toughened me up and kind of introduced me to a different mindset, which I like, going back to what I said earlier, I think was almost more important than any of the technical skills I learned. But yeah, definitely humbling overall. Yeah.
Yeah, man. At what point from then when you entered Berklee? Did you get to a point where you're like, my music's starting to sound good, I want to start putting it out?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it was around my second. Well, yeah, okay. So COVID hit during my first semester, or my second semester at Berklee, like March. And at the time, I was still releasing music under my my real name, which is Max Harris. That's where I got Harris from, obviously. But there's just something about it. I felt like I kind of not that I outgrew my own name, because I feel like you can't really do that. But it just felt like the music I was putting out and kind of the vibe I had and everything just wasn't really who I was, because through the first 2 years of Berklee, you go through a lot, mentally, socially, emotionally, whatever, and it just felt like I didn't really want my music to be attached to my like actual name. So then it was around like 2020. Yeah, this is like fall of 2020. Well, I guess we'll backtrack to like spring of 2020. So this is like a year after COVID hit. We finally get to go back on campus, masks and everything. But we're allowed to work on music again in person, which is like the greatest thing. And I just started kind of writing and making these songs that were not, like, my old vibe, like when I was releasing under Max Harris, was kind of, dance pop, very happy, very upbeat, kind of representing where I was at in my life then. And then, I don't really know necessarily what happened. There's really nothing to pinpoint it, but I just kind of wanted to dig deeper and, really ask myself, like, if I'm making music and I'm passionate about it, then I feel like whoever listens to this music, it should be able to help them in some sort of way. So that's kind of when I started experimenting with like, like kind of more emotional pop slash, future bass, melodic, but what, I don't really know what you want to call it. I feel like it kind of sits in its own space a little bit, but definitely, like the pop influenced kind of singer songwriter, I guess, whatever you want to call it. So it wasn't until like January of 2020 when I really started kind of trying to work on, that sort of music. And that's when I met, my friend Jonathan, who I mentioned earlier, and Nicole. And so, we would all work on a song, and, I will say I'm not the very best songwriter still, which is why I like, going to Jonathan to help me a lot. But he was able to write the song called "What Would It Mean" with me and Nicole, and then that ended up being the first song I released under Harris, which was like, kind of a big thing for me, because we got it signed to like an indie label, and it was just like it was kind of just a surreal experience, and that's kind of when I knew that that's the type of, not necessarily that's the type of music, but that I guess the essence of Harris as a whole kind of was starting to come to life. And that's when I realized that that's what I should be doing. And that's not to say that I haven't been working on like more like house or more pop inspired tracks lately, but like at its core, Harris is like a very emotional, a very like kind of raw, I guess I hate the word project because I think it's stupid, but I guess Harris is like a reflection of me, which is like I'm a very emotional, like kind of raw person. So that's kind of when it started coming to life of what I should focus on, and kind of how I should be trying to not help others with my music, but just kind of share like my experience, or even Jonathan's experiences, and or even Nicole's experiences, or like really just kind of share an experience that I feel like people could relate to. Because I think music is healing, and I think whether that's a sad song, a happy song, whether that's like some like 990 BPM like hardcore techno song, so it's like, I guess that's to oh geez, to kind of answer your question, that's kind of how I kind of realized I should start releasing music, is after I had those songs, and I was like, I just feel like the message of this song, like these songs in particular, are a little bit too strong to kind of keep to yourself. And I feel like everyone should kind of feel that way about their music. Is that you should want to share your story with the world and like your message with the world. Even if it's just an instrumental track, like there's so much emotion and there's so much like authenticity in every song, that you write, whether you're writing it with that intent or not. And I feel like a lot of people just need to get past the hump of, I don't think my music's good enough, or like, oh, this won't get any listens, and I feel like it's more about, that's a selfish way to look at it, because I feel like even if it gets 10 plays, or whatever plays, it's still, I consider like like everyone that listens to a song, I feel like they're being helped in some way, kind of thing. So it's like, one listen could, even if you get 10 listens on a song, one of those people could, it could strike a chord with them really hard, and they could, like, it could be their favorite song, or like, and I'm kind of going on a tangent here, so sorry, but it's like, music can just kind of, it can put you in a specific time and place, right? So even if you're driving like down the highway or something, and you're not really listening to like your favorite songs, but something pops on, and like there's like an aroma in the air, or like you're with your best friends, or like, you're with your girlfriend or something like that, and then, you may not hear the song again for like another year or so, but once you hear that, you instantly are brought back to a time and a place. And even if your song only has 10 listens, every time that one person may listen to it again, it could bring them back to that very specific, moment, either good or bad. But that's what I think is just so cool about music in general, is the streams don't really matter. It's really the memories that kind of are ingrained into the music, I feel like. But that, anyways, that's a long way to answer it. But yeah, like 2020 is kind of when I wanted to start releasing that new type of music, if that makes sense.
I think everyone can relate to that too. Everyone has at least a few songs out there where they listen to them and it takes them back to a specific memory or a specific place or something.
Yeah. No,
It's
totally. I
powerful.
mean, it's almost at like a loss for words, because it's crazy, because right when you said that, I can think of, I didn't start going to Berklee, so I went to a different school before, and there's this one song um called Love Me Back by Ritual, and I would listen to it like every day walking to my first like radio station DJ job. And I can like smell like I can smell the walk. I can smell the walk. And I can feel like, it's just weird. It's like almost like giving like chills a little bit. And I'm sure, like, you, or like anyone has like a song they can just think of that kind of brings them back. Or if you heard it, it would just like bring you back, which I think is really cool. But yeah, definitely a really cool experience there.
Yes. And the chills. I love the chills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the hair's sticking up. Yeah, it's cold in here now. Yeah.
And you do have like a saying that's related to your brand that's no genre, just feelings. No
Yeah,
genres.
so yeah, I mean, so that's kind of how I like to look at it, because I feel like once you kind of pigeonhole yourself into a genre, I feel like it's not, I mean, it's definitely good for branding and stuff. Like obviously everyone knows that, like Excision's like a dubstep DJ, right? Or a dubstep producer. Like everyone knows, well, I guess not really anymore, but like Illenium's like future bass, melodic bass, or whatever, which is okay. But I feel like the music you make should not reflect a genre you're trying to make. It should reflect how you're feeling and like the emotions you're having. Because like I could release a future based song, right? But it's not. I wouldn't call it a future based song. I'd call it like, this is like my emotional whatever, like whatever song. And then like if I have a house song, it's like, this is my chill song, or like, so it's like I kind of like, I really, at least for me, I feel like it makes way more sense to kind of categorize by like emotion or feelings. And like, not, you don't even need to really put it into words, right? It's not like one of those things where I'm releasing a happy song, or like, because like everyone can hear it and it can make them feel a different way, especially like depending on where they are in their life and like what they're doing. So I just don't really like the whole genre thing, even though I understand it. But for me, it's like I make so many different types of music, so many like different feelings and emotions, that I just kind of like saying, I don't really make a genre, right? It's, I make so many genres, but the feeling, like I create feelings, not genres. So it's like, um, I guess that's really the best way to describe it without going like down like some random pigeonhole. But yeah, in essence, yeah, no genres, just feelings. So it's kind of like a good way to kind of, shorten it up.
Yeah, man. Can you talk a little bit about your workflow? Like, how do you go about creating a
Yeah,
song?
dude. So this is so it kind of all starts differently. So I mean, a lot of the times it all starts with an inspiring sound. So um it, it it's really different every time. But what I've been doing lately is I'll get a drone or an ambience, either one that I've created or on Splice, like, literally just like, for example, like, all right, I have a D major ambience playing out. So it's just playing, D, F sharp, A, or whatever. And then I have like my method is kind of get an ambience, then get a chord structure. So I really like finding like the chords first. So I'll do, I'll usually just get like a big serum like Reese bass, like a kind of like a deep bass, and I'll kind of fiddle around until I find a really good chord progression that I like, and then from there, once I have like the songwriting structure, I guess you could call it. Because I feel like songwriting and kind of arrangement is as important as like sound design choices and stuff like that. Because if you have really bad chords or a really bad like bass line or whatever, then like changing the sounds isn't going to make it sound better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so after I had like the chords or I guess the basic structure, it kind of depends on how I'm feeling. A lot of the times recently, I've been working on the verse and like build first and then going to a drop, just because I feel like whenever I start with the drop first, I feel like it ends up being too low energy, and then I make the drop the verse, and then I like build up again because I just always want to like go more and more. But yeah. So I mean, usually, dude, it's just like an ambience. You start with something like a drone, get a bass in there, then you start building your chords. Adding like your flourishments or whatever, and then it's adding percussion, and then stuff like that. Um, and then sometimes I flip the script completely, and I just do like I'm a drummer, right? So I started playing drums when I was like 3 or 4. So I hear rhythm in like everything. It's like so for me, one of the most important elements in music is the drums and the rhythm, right? So it's like how's the kick working with the bass? How are the percussion working with the snare? All that. So a lot of times what I've been doing recently is actually starting with a drum track, like just programming drums like throughout. So I mean like I'll start with the drop for drums because I know what I want them to be. And then I'll go ahead and do like the verse and obviously make changes after the synths and vocals are down and everything. But I really like starting with drums. Just because I feel like if you can always change like the chords and stuff to a song, right? And you can always change like that. But if you change the drum pattern and stuff, it changes the vibe like completely. If you're at like 150 BPM, like making a trap song or something, and you go like double time and make it like speed house, like 4 to the floor, that's going to change it so much differently. That's going to be way different than having like, halftime like trap pattern, right? But if you change the chords around, it's going to change like, it's going to change it, slightly like the feeling and the vibe of it, but it won't change like the track itself. So I feel like, starting with drums is another cool thing for me. And then my kind of third way of starting a track is I'll take an acapella, either of a song I'm working on or one of my own songs, or even just one of my favorite songs at the time. And I'll produce a song around that, kind of start it as a remix. That way you already have a really good vocal sitting on top of it. So you kind of, know where to take the melodic structure and stuff like that. And then after that, I'll just delete the acapella and then just send it to a singer or, write something over it. And, that way you have a full track done to an actual acapella. And then you kind of just get different vocals on it. And I feel like that is probably the most efficient way to finish a song or to I guess, to start / create a song. But, yeah, dude, it really just depends on how I'm feeling that day. But I would say more recently than not, I've been starting with drums a lot, which I don't really know if it's helped my workflow necessarily because I'm very picky with it. But yeah, I would say it's kind of disorganized, or I guess organized chaos a little bit for me, at least
Yeah.
specifically.
It sounds pretty organized compared to the people I spoke with, especially.
Really? Think so?
Everyone,
Okay,
yeah,
I
everyone
guess
has a
that's
different
good.
way. It's interesting. Yeah, I like your
Yeah.
approach though. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad someone does.
How
Yeah.
about collabing with another artist? How does that change up your workflow, and how do you go about doing that?
Yeah, dude. So it really depends on who it is, and like if it's in person, if it's online. I would say a majority of the collabs I've done have been online, remote, just because it's way easier to send stems and stuff nowadays. But it really it depends if they one use Ableton or if they're two on a different DAW. I guess for example, my latest, or I guess a collaboration I've been working on has been with my friend Aaron Shirk and Nicole singing. Obviously, I feel bad 'cause she sings all, but it just sounds so good. And then Jonathan Plummer, he helped us write it. So it actually started out as a remix for this artist named Britt Laurie, and they were going to release it, and then they ended up kind of scrapping the remix EP. So we wanted to repurpose it. And I had this song that had another top line over it, and it was like, I wouldn't say it was great, right? But I wouldn't say it was bad, but it wasn't something that I was making with the intent to make an original song. So it's like, it was kind of made, as a remix for a purpose, for playlists, for, whatever. Um and so then I showed Aaron, and Aaron was like, dude, I really love the song. If you're not going to use it, we should work on it. And so what I ended up doing was, instead of sending him, all the stems separate and whatever, I just sent him the Ableton project, which is a lot easier than, exporting stems and doing all that. And from there, it's been like, Discord sessions, kind of getting on, one of us sharing our screen and just kind of giving live feedback, but not like producing the whole song in front of each other. Um, which I feel like is a great thing about electronic music in particular, is that, you could have like 6 or 7 collabs going on, and, never have to, waste your time, or not, I guess not waste, but never have to spend your time, like, face to face, like nitpicking, like going through everything, you know? So it's a really cool, it's a really cool thing there. But, and then, sometimes if it's in person, it's like, I think for me, in person is a slower process, for production collabs. Like writing, I feel like is way 1,000 times easier in person, because all you need is a piano, acoustic guitar, and like someone who can sing. Um, but then, once you do like your online collabs, it's, you can just kind of work on it at your own time whenever you want. Send the stems to them or send the project to them. They can work on it. It's kind of out of your mind for the time being, and then once they send it back, you're in like work mode again. So, um, that's kind of how I handle, online versus in person, stuff. I definitely prefer writing in person, but I think for collaborating, for some reason, I just like being alone when I'm working on production, because I move like, not slow, but I feel like each sound, like I'm kind of like a perfectionist, so, which is kind of like a toxic trait, I feel like at this point. But, so yeah, I definitely prefer like kind of being on my own, working like remotely, and then being like, just being really inspired, being like, okay, I have this sick thing, let me send it over to them, see what they can do. Because, I feel like a lot of, at least my inspiration, when you're working on these like emotional songs, come from not a place of necessarily feeling alone, but kind of like being alone and kind of being with your own like emotions, because that's kind of how I feel like you get the most authentic version of the song, is by kind of, being alone and kind of digging into like what you want to make, and then sending it off to someone else, and like, they're in their own headspace, and they're figuring out what they want to do. And it's kind of like it's really really cool thing to see a song come together that way, I think. So yeah.
Yeah, man. You probably create a lot of songs and you don't release all of them. Is that
Hmm. Oh yeah.
what?
I mean, I yeah. Go ahead. What were you gonna say?
I was just wondering what, like, how do you decide if you want to scrap a song, and like what percent do you actually end up releasing?
Oh, dude, yeah. So I mean, for me particularly, I'd probably release like 5% maybe of what I make.
Dude, yeah.
Um, it's just a lot of like, I feel like the one thing that I really need to get better, not get better at, but is finishing ideas. And it's like,
Mhm.
I have so many, like, even, I mean, I have like full length songs, but the one thing that I can't do is sing, right? Like
Mhm.
I can write like a little bit. Um, I'm definitely getting better at the writing aspect and, stuff like that. But like, I like can't, dude, even with auto tune, like I cannot, I just don't have a singer's
Yeah.
tone. So it's like, for me, a lot of the reason songs don't get released is because I have an instrumental sitting around, and I guess it's more so me just, I guess, like, to be honest, just being lazy, kind of,
Mhm.
and not really like actively seeking out like a vocalist. Because for me, I feel like the vocals on every song have to fit it perfectly,
Mhm.
and if it's not like a perfect vocal, or like even the timbre, like, I mean, even with my song "What Would It Mean," Nicole was the seventh vocalist we did on that. Um,
Whoa.
just because like it's such like a personal song, and it was like very, like, I don't know, for me it just had to fit right, and if it didn't fit right, then it wasn't worth it. Um, but yeah, I mean, I release 5% of what I make, and I do like do a lot of production for, other artists, and help with that. So that does take like a lot of my time too. So I'd say that's like another excuse of why I don't release as much as I want to. But I think it's more of a mental thing for me, because, it's like I have all this. I even have, I have like 5 songs that are finished, right? But
Mhm.
I feel like my mindset recently has been shifting from, okay, I really need to get this, to release on like a label like Monster Cat, or like, Mr. Suicide Sheep, or like that. And, I just kind of want to start self-releasing them, because,
Yes.
what I said earlier, keeping the music to yourself is selfish. And, I just feel like I need to sit down and kind of figure out which ones I want to actually like for sure self-release. I'm sitting on like at least 12 like completely finished tracks, just unsigned right now, just trying to figure out what to do with them. And like, dude, every producer has like hundreds of demos, like halfway done, 3/4 done. So it's just, And then, then the argument becomes, okay, do I want to keep these for myself, or do I want to like pitch them to other artists, or do I want to sell them, or do I want to, so it's like every day, it's like creating like 2 or 3 ideas and then figuring out what to do with them. But I would say, and I'm kind of using this interview to hold me accountable, is I need to start finishing the unfinished demos, and I'm going to start either sending out the finished demos or the finished songs, or just start releasing them. And I'm going to clip this moment. So I
Yeah,
hold
man.
myself for that.
Good, good.
But yeah,
What's the
dude.
process for releasing on a label? I heard it takes a lot longer than you would think,
Oh
right?
yeah. So yeah, dude. So, and that was actually what caught me by surprise at first. So, and it does depend what type of label you're releasing on. Like, in EDM labels, I like to break them up into like, you have the indie labels / like YouTube labels. So we're talking like Wave Music, Mr. Suicide Sheep, and these are labels that aren't owned by a DJ or a producer. And then you have like the other side of EDM labels, which are like Ophelia, which is 7 Lines, or have like Subsidia, which is Excision, um, Cyclops, which is Subtronics or whatever. So you have like the two sides of the EDM labels, right? So you have the artist labels, and then you have like the YouTube labels. What I have found personally is that the YouTube labels take a lot longer because they have a lot bigger catalog. They're pushing out like 6 or 7 songs every week, even more. And then for like, the artist labels, they're kind of a little bit more selective on what they release. Um, not, I wouldn't necessarily say that means the quality is better. I just think that it's just they have more of a specific sound, right? Because like, if you think of Subtronics, you're going to think of, obviously dubstep, like kind of, that kind of not wook stuff, but like you can hear like what a Subtronic song sounds like, right? And you can kind of hear the sound of his label. And like I have a song coming out on Ophelia in January with my friend Kydra, which is 7 Lines label, and like you could like pigeonhole that into like melodic bass, but this time they're kind of keeping that melodic bass vibe, but they're doing like a D&B like album thing. So it's like it's going to be on there, and it's like um that process of the Ophelia track was like we sent it 3 weeks ago, and they sent us back contract, said we'll release it in January. So that's what, like 3 months, maybe 2.5, 3.5. When I'm releasing, when I released, for example, this my song "Love You Better" on Suave, which is like a house label. We signed the song in April, and it came out the next January. So that's like 8 months. And then when we signed my song "What Would It Mean" to Wave Music, we signed that in it's like February, and that came out in October. So it's almost as if you kind of need to plan your releases, right? Because it's like, I have a few releases lined up for next year, but by the time we get there, that may not be the music I'm currently making, or you're like, that may not be, how I'm feeling in the moment. That may not be like my sound or whatever anymore. So that's, I feel like, another big reason why it's so hard to release music, like self-release and stuff, or like, or even release those songs. Cause I have a lot of songs that sound like I made them 6 months ago compared to what I'm releasing now. It's because I did make them 6 months ago, but like in the song that just came out, like, like my song "Hope You Know," which is more like, that's kind of more of what I'm leaning towards, but I still made that song like 7 months ago, and it's like the stuff I'm making now that I'm like, oh dude, I want to release now. For me, I'm kind of scared that it won't fit into like the arc of what Harris is, right? Because it's like, which I feel like kind of contradicting what I said earlier, but I feel like that is an important thing for branding, is not like, releasing the same thing, but being consistently like keeping it interesting, right? So it's like, for me, I would never want to release like, say like, or like look at like Sudden Death, right? Like he wouldn't release just randomly like a radio pop song, right? After releasing like, hardcore like Death Step for like 4 years, right? So it's like, but he may eventually get there, like, who knows, right? If he does, but if he does, it'll be a slow, like so insanely slow arc of like getting there. Which, I wouldn't, I don't really do that drastic of change, but yeah, definitely having like those long layover periods between sign date and release date is definitely like a mental like game you have to play with yourself and figure out like, that's why, it's good to get those big batches of songs signed at the same time and kind of plan them out for the year, or else you're kind of going to be like scrapping by like like I've been trying to figure out. But yeah, so in short, definitely over a few months. Sometimes it could take like up to a year depending on like, what label and how busy they are and stuff.
Do you see benefits of working with a label?
Yeah. So I think I mean, nowadays, like, I mean, it is so, well, I guess not easy, but it's so more accessible to kind of blow up on TikTok and kind of promote yourself. Um, but I feel like you can still do that even when releasing a song through a label. And what the label is going to bring to the table. Every label is different, right? Like I will say, there's been some I've released on that I really enjoyed. Because along with my promo, they also have access to all these, like, their personal Spotify playlists, or like big YouTube channels, or like blogs and stuff. Like there's just some labels that do a lot more for you than others. Um, and so I guess the benefit is, like, I like to tell people, like, if you can get a label release for like your first releases, or not first releases, but like if you can get them, like, in general, like, you should obviously just be releasing music, but I would say always go, like, always go with it, because here's the thing. It's like, at this stage in like my career, and like I feel like a lot of other people's career, it's like you don't make money from streaming, really. So it's like giving away 50% to label isn't going, like, if they can get you like 100,000 streams on your song, and you're giving them 50% of like the 20 cents you're going to make, then that's a good trade-off than keeping 40 cents and only getting like 300 streams, or whatever. So it's like, and I guess that's the biggest thing about labels. A lot of them like own playlists, or they have access to them, which not only introduces you to new fans, it gets your song like streams and listens. Um, and then the more exposure you get, I wouldn't necessarily say more exposure is good, because a lot of the times the listeners don't convert to actual fans. So you could have like 200K listeners one month because your song got on a big playlist, and then the month after, like, you have a million song or a million streams, but you have like 2,000 monthly listeners because they didn't convert to fans. So it's kind of like devil's advocate there. Um, but I would say that, I mean, the biggest benefit to releasing this label is just the network they have, and like, they'll send out, sometimes promo packages to DJs. They can help you get on radio. Um, because they want the song to do well, because it's a business, and they're only going to make money if you're making money, and they're going to take 50% of it, of what little money it is. But they're releasing like 100 songs a year. They're making decent amount of passive income. So, they're going to want to push that, passive income, baby. They're going to want to push that income. So, yeah, I mean, it's really, at the end of the day, it's like, it's almost like hiring a business partner, and you're just giving them what little money you'd make in exchange for, streams and potential fans, which I think is more important than the money at this stage.
Yeah, man. And the label does a lot of marketing for you, but I'm assuming you also do marketing yourself, right? Like, you make content and stuff.
Yeah, so it really depends on the label. So I mean, like, there's some labels that will, like, they'll make you a graphic, they'll make you a Spotify thing, they'll actually like act like they're invested. And then there's other labels who will like tell you, oh, we're not going to put your song on a playlist, unless you do this or that or this or that. But a lot of it does come from self promo. Um, and I would say that's like one thing I've definitely been slacking on, especially my latest song. Is just because, dude, it's so hard, like, to create the music, to write it, and then after you make it and all this stuff, to need to spend like an hour like editing videos and like doing all this stuff, and it's like you get kind of sick of the song because you hear it so much, to be honest. So it's like, like, when I put out a song, I'm like, dude, like, I want everyone else to listen to it. I don't want to listen to it 100,000 more times again. At least at this moment, I got to give it like a week buffer period. But yeah, I mean, a lot of the self promo comes from TikToks, Instagram, and I feel like a lot of people. I mean, it's obviously the best way to market yourself is just self promotion. I feel like it's something I necessarily haven't got quite the hang of yet, just because I dread it so much. But that being said, also gonna use this to keep me accountable and start start doing a little bit more of that. I just gotta, everyone has their own content style, and it's easier to to mess around than wait till you find one that works for you. So I just gotta keep keep messing around. But yeah, every label is different.
Yeah, man. And you also have management, right?
So my guy Charlie, Charlie manages me, and he's great. He gets, like, helps out with shows, gets, he's more of a great friend than anything too. I mean, but yeah, working with Charlie at CG Management.
Yeah, man. What has that done for you? And like, when did you decide that you needed management?
Yeah, so this is like a tough question, because so first off, I met him because He manages my friend Diego, who goes by Bloomline, and then he's from Boston. If he's like a Boston guy. He's got the accent and stuff. So, but I met him because he works for Wave Music. He was an A&R there, or still is. And I sent him. I just randomly remember seeing on Facebook one day he posted and said, "Yo, EDM artists, send me your songs. I want to get them signed. Blah blah." So I sent him What Would It Mean, which is like my first label release. This is like 3 years ago. And he really liked it. He ended up getting assigned to the label. And it's still like my biggest song to date. Well, not biggest, but it's like my favorite, I think, song to date. And that's kind of how I started talking to him. And then, it was more conversations of, hey, dude, I have this other song. Could you get it? Like, would you mind sending it around anywhere? He's like, yeah. And then, he'd get it signed. And I'd be like, hey, dude, like, is there any way you could help me get this show? Blah, blah, blah. He'd be like, yeah, blah, 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 and just basically he was just so willing to help out, whenever I needed it, and I know he helps out like tons of artists, whether, you're signed to, his management or not, or, whatever. But then there came a point where I was like, you know what, I'm just making music at such like a high rate, like high volume, like I'm making so much music that I'm just kind of becoming disorganized. I'm like, if he's helping me like get every single song signed, then like maybe we should talk about, actually, managing, so it's not just like him doing favors for me, all the time. It's like him, like, it's kind of more of like a partnership. And then, basically from there, he actually did end up signing my friend Aaron as well, working with him for a little bit. And then that's kind of around the same time that I reached out to him. We'd been talking for like a year or two, and I was like, hey, do you just want to like kind of make this official so we can, it's like not like, oh, dude, can you do a favor for me? It's like, we're kind of gonna kind of like work as a team and kind of, do all that together. So
Nice, man. So it just developed naturally, it sounds like.
yeah, it was a very natural, slow process. It wasn't like I woke up one day and was like, I need a manager. It was kind of like we just fell into that role with each other. Um, and it's and I think at least managers are important, right? Because they kind of take not the mundane tasks out, but they take like it's just another person who basically believes in you, wants they want you to be successful, right? And that the most important thing in the industry is to surround yourself with people who want you to be successful and who want to be successful themselves, right? So it's like
Yes.
kind of surround yourself with good, good-hearted, good-headed people. So definitely found a good one there with just that natural connection with Charlie.
Yeah, man. I want to talk about, like, what is the future like for you? What are you planning, like 5 years from now? Where do you want to be?
Yeah, dude, that's crazy. I mean, like, so my dream is to have my own like electronic live setup and like, do a tour, but have like, I make visuals and stuff too. So like do like custom visuals and, stuff like that. But, like I really, honestly, dude, I just want the future to kind of, just to bring like happiness, and just to bring, like peace and, like stuff like that. So to be honest, like in the musical sphere, like there's so many things that I want to do, like I love producing for other people. I love making pop music, I love writing, but I also really love performing, I really love, getting on stage and kind of, sharing that emotion with people. So, in like 5 years, I still hope I'm just doing, I can do music full time. I'm hoping that, I'm going to be doing like a different, asset of things. But in terms of the Harris, like, the Harris sound, I'm really hoping that I can develop, because I have a live show ready to go. I have like, a whole, not just DJing, I have like a whole like instrumental setup. So I'm just hoping that, I can continue to grow and kind of, introduce people to kind of the emotions I'm feeling and, kind of just share that, with people. So, but yeah, definitely want to be on stage and kind of, just sharing that with everyone is kind of my, my main goal. But to be honest, it's not something, I mean, I'm obviously, I'm pushing for it, but it's not something I'm going to force. So it's, if I end up, just kind of taking a more like, background pop production route or, whatever, whatever it is, it's as long as I can do music and, kind of make other people happy and make, and make other people kind of really like, not question, but really like think about, something a little bit more deeper than maybe they would have, then, I'll be feeling good. So, but yeah, I mean, other than that, EP coming out next year, hopefully,
Yeah.
just a bunch of music, hopefully a lot of shows. I really do want to have my own show. Like I want maybe in Nashville or maybe Boston or something. Cause I have a live show like ready to go, like I said, but with like when you're actually like doing like a live electronic performance, it's really hard to like get on a bill with like a touring DJ and do that as like an opening set, just because like you got to bring like all of your stuff. So definitely want to throw a show, next year or so. So, but yeah, it's probably like the immediate future for me.
Yeah, man. And Max, where can people find you if they want to listen to your stuff?
Yeah, dude. So I mean, I go by Harris. It's on all platforms. It's an H4RRIS. So it's Harris, but with a four in there because gotta be a little bit quirky. And Harris Music on Instagram. Pretty much Harris Music everywhere. And then just on Spotify, Apple Music, it's just gonna be Harris. But yeah, pretty much hear me wherever your heart desires.
Yeah, man. And what do you want to promote? I know you said you had potentially an EP coming out next year.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm planning early next year, like a 4 or 5 song EP. It's more experimental. It's like a really like singer songwriter folk type stuff with like heavy electronic elements. But yeah, that's going to be hopefully coming out at least by April. I actually have a vocal recording session for that later today, so we're hopefully going to get a few tracks done there. And, other than that, I would just say just be on the lookout for new music. I'm always posting. Kind of little edits and remixes, um, not going to be releasing any more originals this year, but next year kind of, trying to stack up the calendar for one a month. But, yeah, so yeah, I would say, if you're looking forward to one thing, just look forward to an EP next year. It's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah, man. What's the name of the pop duo again that you do?
Yeah. So the pop duo is called Playhouse. It's just Playhouse, one word. And, it's me and my friend, Jonathan Plummer, just making pop and stuff.
Hell yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome.
dude.
Thanks for taking the time again, Harris. This has been really
Yeah, dude.
insightful for me. I'm sure for anyone else listening too.
Yeah, dude. Appreciate taking the time, Ted. It's really good to meet you, dude.
You too. Yeah, nice to meet you, Max.